For generations, the Smoky Mountains have been home to hardy hill folk. First settled by trappers and hunters eager to escape the rapidly growing population of the original 13 colonies and seek their fortunes, the mountains became known as a haven for those seeking independence, and they embraced the hard but simple life they found there. This independent streak also led to a long-running conflict between the authorities and the families of the mountain. The first real flashpoint exploded during Prohibition, when Johnny Law came out in force, hunting down the family stills and chasing bootleggers up and down the old country roads. No matter how hard they tried, Johnny Law was never able to get the hill folks to toe the line. Instead, new tales were told about the folk heroes who refused to bend the knee to the authorities and inspired later generations to fight for their right to do what they pleased. As the years wore on and technology changed, you might find the occasional bootlegger wielding a laser rifle instead of a six-shooter. But the hill folk kept their traditions, running moonshine and guns, always staying one step ahead of Johnny Law, who now chased them with vertibirds and atomic-powered police cars. The tune might have changed, but the dance remained the same. When the bombs dropped on October 23, 2077, not much changed for the people of the Smoky Mountains. The flashes on the horizon were someone else's problem, not theirs. Johnny Law wasn't coming round no more, and in a few years' time, new creatures were roaming the hills and valleys, but the hill folk kept to their ways. Moonshine and guns still mattered in the new world, and while the faces of the customers might have changed, trade was still the universal language. From the Rad Zone, formerly known as Oak Ridge, to the Knoxville ruins, the survivors adjusted to life in the Wasteland. It wasn't until later that a new threat emerged from the valleys of eastern Tennessee. They called themselves the Tennessee Reivers, former carnies from the tourist towns of Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. A veritable raider army rose to take control of the trade in and out of the hill country. The conflict between the families of the hills folk and the Reivers lasted years. Despite having numbers and ferocity, the cannibalistic raiders fared no better at hunting down the moonshiners and bootleggers than Johnny Law had in decades past. It wasn't until greed finally turned one family against the others, and in a carefully planned ambush masquerading as a peace offering, the Reivers wiped out most of the heads of the families, scattering the rest to be hunted down at their leisure. It became known throughout the region as the Scouring, and it would have been a total victory if not for the actions of a single hill folk survivor. She was known only as Red, for her fiery red hair, but also her temper. She'd been away, taking a caravan of shine over the Carolina border when her family was killed. Upon her return, the Reivers had given her a choice. Hand over the exact location of her family's supply of guns and shine and they'd let her live. Or they'd flay the skin from her body until she told them what they wanted to know. Confident there was no escape, they even gave her the night to think about it. Knowing they'd never let her live, regardless of what she gave them, Red prepared a warm welcome. When the Reivers came back to collect their spoils of war, Red met them with a smile and blew up the entire homestead in their faces. Under the cover of the explosions, Red got the hell out of Dodge, grabbed her Lucky Brahmin and Old Percy, her family's old service rifle, and headed north, disappearing into the Appalachian hills. The Reivers licked their wounds and clamped down on eastern Tennessee, setting up slave camps in their own stills, forcing the survivors and anyone else they could lay their hands on to brew as much shine as they could. They traded the product to caravans and settlements far and wide, at least those lucky ones they didn't raid for new slaves, or just food. But the Tennessee Reivers never did forget about Red. And Red, well, she was as tough and ornery as they come. And she was hill folk, through and through. After playing her own part in Appalachia's closing chapter, Red shouldered Old Percy and slung her pack. Without ceremony, she began putting one foot in front of the other as she walked the worn paths down the former Appalachian Trail into Kentucky, setting her sights back to her old home in the eastern Tennessee hills. In the decades that followed, the stories told about her epic tale of revenge and remembrance would be immortalized in story and song, known to all as the Ballad of Trader Red.
It seems like forever ago I was on this same damn road, running from what was left of my home. Running from the Reavers who killed my kin and wanted nothing more than to end me as well. I went to Appalachia looking for a place to hide, or start over. I guess I'm not really sure what I wanted back then. Never expected I would have gone from the frying pan into the fire. First, old Jimmy boy, that lazy good-for-nothing, lied to me and put me in hock with the Blue Ridge Caravan. If he hadn't ended up in the bottom of a pot of super mutant stew, I would have killed him myself for what he did. To pay off his debt, old Vinny Costas set me up. Sent me off to this place called the Mire to find some hidden treasure, and get me killed at the same time. I should have died up there, but Appalachia wasn't gonna let go of me that easy. Instead, I ended up with a bunch of extras, and smack dab in the middle of the biggest mess you ever did see. A war so big and bad that when it was all over, there wasn't an Appalachia anymore. The good guys won, I think, but it cost plenty. Folks lost their homes, their kin, and gave their lives against the big bad. And I lost what little I had left. I lost my Shiny. Who's Shiny? He was my deathclaw. And that, well, it's a long damn story too. But he was mine. Followed me around like a puppy dog. Because of my extras, I think we could feel what each other was thinking. And he saved my life more times than I could count. And that last time, he made sure I got away. But he didn't. Not to say he didn't leave me nothing. Not many folks are walking around with a tried and true deathclaw egg. But that was my Shiny's last gift to little old me. And once it hatches, we'll see if it sees me as mama or if it tries to eat me. So I said goodbye to my friends and put the wastes behind me and decided to head south. I lost everything I had. Thought I'd lost all of me too. But Ma and Pa used to say that us hill folk were part of those there Smoky Mountains. And if old Johnny Law couldn't run us off, then it would be a sin to let those raiders have what's rightfully ours. I know it ain't gonna be easy. And those Reavers gonna try to eat me alive for what I did to them. But it's time to head back to the old homestead. And this time, it doesn't end until I set things right. Or I get put in the ground. But I sure as hell are gonna take a lot of them with me if it comes to that. For now, it's just one foot in front of the other, Red. Down this same damn road.
Ever get so lost in your favorite game that the day slips by unnoticed? Do you need audio dramas and gaming pods to get you through the day till you can jump back in game? You're not alone. I'm inviting you to join me as we dive into a world of immersive lore and gameplay on my shows The Fallout Feed, Starfield Lorecast, and Dames Who Game, plus all the shows we do on the ASA Podcasting Network. On the Fallout Feed, we celebrate the world of Fallout and occasionally other RPGs, where rad roaches are far from the only bugs you'll encounter, and there's always a new way to tackle a quest. For Starfield fans, join me on the Lorecast. And on Dames Who Game, join me and my girls as we mix games, nerdy media, makeup, and our latest obsessions. With these and other shows at ASA Podcasting, we believe the best way to experience a game is to dive deep. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, you name it. ASA Podcasting, your next adventure starts here.
In the aftermath of the Great War, the survivors discovered the Wasteland had rules of its own. The strong prey on the weak, monsters are real, and don't trust anyone. On the roads of post-war Kentucky, one family was looking for a new start, hoping to find some place those rules didn't apply. The strip of old asphalt known as I-75 wound its way across down through the ruins of Lexington to point south. Once a major thoroughfare in the eastern central Commonwealth made up of the states of Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee, it was still a vital link used by traders bringing goods from the Great Lakes to lands further afield. Well-trafficked didn't mean safe, not by any stretch, and the caravans were well guarded. For others who traveled that dangerous road, they would have to take their chances, for the Wasteland was unforgiving and trust was in short supply. And when someone fails to heed the lessons of the New World, one way or another, the Wasteland would be paid its due.
Did I ever tell you about old Percy? No? Well, I gotta tell you, darling, it's one of my favorite stories. And not just 'cause his rifle got passed down to me, neither. See, when my pa used to work on the stills, I was right there by his side. And he always passed the time by telling me all kinds of tall tales and stories of our kin. Now, nobody could tell a tale like my pa. Every time it was like he was there. And even though I never could quite figure out how much of it was true, I don't rightly think it mattered. Ma once told me that Pa said my face would light up like one of those there Christmas trees, with eyes as big as copper pans, when he got into one of his stories. But yeah, I was gonna tell you all about old Percy. See, us hill folk weren't known for leaving our homes. Most of our kin grew up on their homesteads and got buried in the old family plots without stepping foot outside our very old Smoky Mountains. Now, there were times when a few brave souls would travel down to Knoxville, and I heard tell of even fewer still who made the trip all the way to Nashville on a fool's errand or some such nonsense. Everything we needed the hills provided. Food, a roof over our heads, and plenty o' shine to sell to the folks in the valley. For most of us, that was enough. None of us were all that book smart, though we all knew how to read and write, because if you was gonna trade, it paid to read the fine print, like my pa used to say. Then came along old Percy. Pa said he had a wanderer about him, right from the day he came into this world. Even as a baby, he was looking for ways to get off the homestead. Pa said Percy never could stay still, learned to hunt almost as soon as he could walk, and folks even compared him to another legend of the hills, our very own Alvin York. Alvin? Another name from another time. True hill folk who went off across the big wide ocean to fight in some old war. Not the kind we got here in these recent times, but still a mighty big fight. Folks said old Alvin could shoot the wings off a fly, and to hear Pa talk about Percy, he might have just been the spitting image of Alvin York. Percy wasn't just a good shot, but he was smart too. Damn smart. Read all the books he could find, until he ran out of things to read. So he up and left, went down the mountain out into the world. Most folks said he was crazy, that the Wander finally came and took him. It wasn't until a few years later that they got news from him again. Turns out old Percy done gone and joined the army. Hard to believe. See, us hill folk fight for our own. Been that way for as long as anyone could remember. And we never, ever put ourselves in the middle of someone else's fight. Pa told me it was quite the scandal. Folks was even gonna send one of the elders to bring him back home where he belonged. But by the time anyone could agree on who would go, well, old Percy was sent across that big ocean again, and well, I guess his kin figured that was the end of it. Years went by, and our kin ran into a spot of trouble. Carpetbaggers from up north, folks with funny-sounding names and expensive suits, decided to start making trouble, looking to take a piece of what we had built with our own blood and sweat. It wasn't as bad as what we had to deal with the Reavers, but these folks even had Johnny Law on their side, greasing palms and raising hell with our shipments. In the middle of all this trouble, well, old Percy done walked back up the mountain and knocked on his old front door. Pa said his folks barely recognized him. The boy who left to see the world came back as a man with scars across his face and an old service rifle slung across his back. As soon as Percy heard about the troubles, it was like he'd never left. Blood runs deep in our kin, even if the wander comes and takes them. And I guess he learned a thing or two beyond that big ocean. Because the next time those fancy suit fellas came looking for trouble, Percy went down to see them. Pa said Percy tried to talk to him, and those folks with the funny names laughed at him. When they reached for their guns, they quit laughing, 'cause Percy made his name that day. Legends say there was an even dozen. But when Percy was done, weren't nothing left but what went into pine boxes. That wasn't the end of it. Not just hill folks, who can be ornery, but every time those fancy fellas came calling, old Percy would send them packing, or send them to meet their makers. Johnny Law even put a huge reward on his head. Had just about every lawman in eastern Tennessee looking for old Percy. But he was like a ghost, too. There one minute and gone the next. It wasn't long before just the whisper of his name was enough to make Johnny Law quake in their boots and start thinking long and hard about how much it was worth to keep making trouble for the hill folk. Pa said those fancy suits made one last mistake. They found out where old Percy hung his hat, meaning he had gotten himself a wife, even had a baby on the way. Johnny Law got paid to make a big noise, sending a whole collection of fools together into the mountains. And old Percy went to keep an eye on 'em, kissed his missus farewell before disappearing into the hills with his rifle. Meantime, those fancy suits found Percy's homestead, found his missus, and to hear Pa tell it, they weren't nice. Not at all. When Percy finally came back and saw what they'd done, he swore on all the spirits of the mountains that he'd put an end to all of it. So he buried his wife and baby in the family plot, gathered up as many kin as he could find, and went hunting. Legend has it that Percy tracked those men all the way back to Knoxville. They were throwing a big shindig with Johnny Law. Figured they'd left the right kind of message to take the fight out of old Percy. Boy, were they wrong, darling. See, Percy had learned quite a bit over that there ocean, and that night, those fancy suits and Johnny Law got their own lesson in exactly why y'all don't mess with us hill folk. After that, well, Pa said old Johnny Law figured it wasn't worth the price to mess with old Percy no more. And those fancy suits? Well, the few that were left decided to find greener pastures. And old Percy? Well, he did what he could do to make sure no one messed with his kin ever again. Every stead had a shooter or two, but he was the first who got us all into real gun running. Guess he still knew a few folks back in the army. And well, shine was a mighty fine commodity to trade for guns. As for anyone who tried to cause trouble, well, old Percy and his rifle kept the peace, one way or another. Pa said that when old Percy passed, he was planted next to his wife. But his rifle, well, that got passed down from generation to generation. Always to the best shot. And the smartest of us, too. The day Pa put it in my hands, I think it might have been the proudest day of my life. And it's always done right by me. Even if things didn't quite turn out the way we all expected, did they? Took good enough care of me, though. Who knows? Maybe when all this is finished, it'll be yours, darling. Oh boy, if Pa could see me now. Darned if Appalachia didn't scramble things a bit. Why else am I promising my legacy to someone who hasn't even hatched yet?
Red leaned back against a tree, cradling the service rifle in her hand as she sat across from the pristine deathclaw egg sticking part way out of her backpack.
Pa would probably say I need to lay off the shine. But the way I see it, less crazy than John to myself, Oh, hell, darling. What now?
The sound of gunshots echoed across the small hollow Red had used to make her camp. It was far enough off the road to provide both cover and protection, but close enough for her to keep an eye on things, and watch her back for anyone who might be getting a little too close. Rushing over and grabbing a pair of binoculars from the backpack, Red crawled up the side of the hollow and peered out along the road.
Oh, geez. Y'all got to be kidding me.
More gunshots rang out, and Red got a good look at what was going on just down the road from where she had made camp. A small caravan had been ambushed, At least 2 Brahmin, stacked with boxes, lay dead in the road, while the gunmen were herding the people over to the side.
Damn raiders.
Red couldn't tell who they were, other than the typical raiders. The others, however, looked to just be a group of settlers. There was an older man, a couple, and at least 4 kids.
Poor folks. Damn Wasteland.
Red winced as she saw one of the raiders walk up to what she figured was the father and hit him with the butt of his rifle, knocking the man to the ground. The oldest of the children, not really a child but a young man, rushed forward and tackled the raider, only to be pulled off and enthusiastically beaten by the others. Red could hear the laughs over the sound of the wind, and a cold chill went down her spine.
It's too many of them for little old Red. Better to just let it go.
Red closed her eyes, only to force them open again. It was a single nagging thought in the back of her head, or maybe it wasn't her thought alone as she glanced down at the egg. Turning back to the road, she saw the raiders gathering up the family, and she could hear the crying.
Damn it.
There was that thought again, and the memory of her Ma and Pa. Red's ears perked up and she glanced over her shoulder. It looked like a dust storm was rolling in.
Maybe? Just maybe.
Red slithered down to the fire and put her hand on the deathclaw egg before stuffing it securely down into the backpack, which she slung over her shoulder.
You better be right, darling, or this is gonna be a short trip.
Checking old Percy one more time, Red gripped the rifle, then pulled the hood over her head to hide her extras, and crouched down, waiting for the storm to arrive.
That was a stupid move, boy. See, we might could have done this the easy way, just taking what we wanted and let you go.
The young man only glared up at the raiders, blood leaking from his nose as he wiped away the trail of red from his face. The raider boss just smiled before looking back over their captives. The gang had gotten lucky. It had been a few weeks since they last made a good score, and just about the time they were getting ready to head back south, they had stumbled on this small caravan.
Dumb luck.
There had only been a couple of guards, scavengers turned mercenary by the looks of them, but more for show than shooting, and they didn't put up too much of a fight. The others, well, they gave up right quick once their hired help was dead. The boys had been a little too excited for fresh meat and maybe a little high on psycho too, because they killed both of the Brahmin without a thought as to hauling away their spoils. But the slim pickings the survivors had been carrying wasn't the real prize.
More meat for the flesh markets.
The boss figured they stumbled on a family, the old man probably not worth much, the parents, some potential there, especially if they had skills. The younger kids, well, they might fetch a good price, and the older boy, he got guts, probably destined for the fighting pits once they got back.
Checked the boxes, boss. It ain't nothing but clothes and crap.
Yeah, figured. But worth a quick look. Anyway, get them on their feet. We're already behind schedule. And if our tribute is late again...
They'll eat us. Heard it 100 times, boss. We got it.
You better, 'cause they ain't playing around.
The raider shook his head and went back to rouse their captives, giving the young man another slap upside his head before dragging him to his feet. The 2 youngest, twins, wouldn't let go of their mother, so the raiders just dragged them all up together, laughing as they did. The old man, nursing a black eye, pushed the raider away when he laid hands on him, instead rising under his own power, even with his arms being tied and a gag in his mouth. The husband stayed close to his wife and children the best he could, trying to put on a brave face despite being terrified.
Y'all got a choice. Not this part. You mind your manners and you don't make any trouble, 'cause I ain't got no problem with leaving pieces of you behind. I only need you breathing. The rest, well, live or die, That's up to you.
The young man wanted to pounce, but his grandpa put his arm on his shoulder and gave him a look. It was enough to quiet him down, but only a bit. The dozen raiders congratulated themselves on an easy score and eyed up their prisoners. Like the boss had said, they only needed to be breathing when they brought them back. Whatever happened before that, well, that was limited only by their imagination.
Shit. Boss, we got a dust double. Incoming.
The raider boss looked to the west, and his smile was replaced with a deep frown. Dust devils were fast-moving dust storms coming out of the now barren Great Plains. Though not as bad as a rad storm, they could still reduce visibility to near zero and make travel near impossible until they passed. There was an old red rocket a couple of miles down the road. The gang had previously used it as a staging area. As important as it was not to dawdle, it was their best bet to wait out the storm there before heading back south with their prizes.
Time to go, boys. Heading back to the Red Rocket until the storm passes. Grab all of them, and let's get our asses in gear.
The gang didn't need to be told twice. Grabbing their prisoners, the group started jogging down the broken road. Even at a dead run, they would have been hard-pressed to get ahead of the storm descending upon them. As the wind picked up and the billowing clouds of dust began to obscure their vision, the gang pressed forward, slower now as the prisoners were herded into the middle, covered by 3 of the raiders, while the others spread out in a circle around them.
Crap, we ain't gonna make it in time.
Try as they might, it was clear the gang wouldn't outrun the storm. It didn't help that the prisoners were slowing them down, especially that mother and her kids. As the wind picked up, the twins were huddled around her legs crying, while she did the best she could to comfort them. The boss thought about leaving them behind, but damn if they wouldn't fetch the best prices.
Keep on moving! We ain't got no time to waste!
The raiders pushed the family forward, grabbing them by their arms and pulling them along as fast as their legs would allow, but they only made it about halfway before the full brunt of the storm came raging across the landscape and engulfed them. Just as the curtain of dust obscured just about everything, the boss thought he saw a flicker of something. But whatever it was gone between blinks. And then their world was shrunk down to only 10 feet in every direction, and beyond that was nothing but a swirling brownish cloud.
Stay on the road and keep walking!
They all struggled to put one foot in front of the other. The boss could only catch fleeting glimpses of his men outside of the 4 of them guarding the civilians. The family coughed and gagged as they huddled more closely together, the adults and older children trying to shield the younger ones. The sound of the wind and blowing dust made it nearly impossible to hear anything else, as even their footfalls were swallowed up by the weather around them.
What the fuck was that?
The boss heard it too, but hell if he couldn't figure out where it came from, because looking around, there was nothing else to see. They all turned and looked back. It was a scream, then nothing. The boss pulled his pistol, but the storm seemed to laugh at him, blotting out everything else. All they could do was keep walking, pulling the civilians with them every foot up that road, hoping and praying they'd find that damn red rocket. That was closer, probably not 24 feet from where they were standing.
Bobby! Stay! What the hell is going on?
The boss's words were answered with nothing but more dust and wind.
Jesse! Faith! Where the fuck are you?
Nothing. The 4 raiders stopped and pointed their guns in each direction, but nothing happened. The storm was getting even worse. Visibility was down to just a few feet. They had to keep moving and get under cover. Even the family was terrified now of whatever was happening, and they finally kept pace, the adults picking up the children so they could run. A final set of screams was enough to break them, and they all ran, raiders and family alike. Until Bob slammed head first into the Red Rocket filling station mascot.
Holy shit! We're here! Door's over there! Grab Bob and get inside! Now!
In the confusion, it was every person for themselves. One of the raiders reached down to grab Bob, dragging him to his feet and pushing him towards the rest, heading into the old abandoned filling station. The young man was trying to help his mother, his hand over her face to protect it from the dust storm. Glancing back, he caught sight of one of the raiders struggling against the wind, and then something came out of the swirling dust. Some kind of dark figure.
Oh my God! What the?
Blinking against the dust in his eyes, the young man could only watch as the raider screamed, his hands wrapped around his neck and yanked him back, a spray of blood erupting as he disappeared out of sight.
Get in, damn it!
The raider boss fired his pistol into the storm, grabbing the mother by the arm while kicking the young man through the door and inside what had been the front office of the Red Rocket. The raider boss thought he heard something. It sounded like a growl. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he nearly dropped his pistol, grabbing for a fresh magazine. The door was mere feet behind him. All he had to do was turn around and rush inside. Once that door was closed, whatever was out here, well, it had at least something between it and them, right? He willed for his body to move, but he was rooted to the spot. Squinting against the dust and dirt, he saw a dark spot in the storm, and it was getting bigger, coming towards him. The raider boss raised his pistol and aimed. Inside the old Red Rocket, Bob tried to get his bearings. It was dark and his head hurt like hell. The family was huddled behind him, taking shelter in the corner. He turned to the open door with one of the gang standing there, yelling out into the storm.
Boss! Boss, where the fuck are you?
As Bob watched, his raider friend took a step outside, waving their gun and yelling again.
Boss! What the?
The raider had been there 1 second, then gone the next, yanked into the dust storm. Bob fumbled for his gun, his hand shaking. He heard something behind him, but it was the door that held his attention, because something was there now, standing just beyond it. Bob relieved himself in terror, even as he tried to pull the trigger.
Hey, asshole!
Bob looked up just in time to be on the receiving end of an old fire extinguisher. With a thud, he was knocked unconscious once again.
Quick, Clayton, grab the guns! JD, untie your ma and the others.
The patriarch of the family had been biding his time. A veteran of the Alaska campaign before the bombs, he wasn't going to let some rope get between him and saving his family. Now he had to make sure they stayed saved, because something was out there. And just because it got rid of those raiders didn't mean it was friendly. Clayton picked up the gun and stood next to Amos, while his older son JD stayed in front of the others. His mother tried to keep the kids quiet, but they were all terrified.
What's out there, Amos?
No idea. But who wants us? It's gotta get past me.
And me.
And me.
Amos rolled his eyes. JD was a good kid, but he had way more bravado than brains, at least in situations like this. The shadow loomed outside the door still, and Clayton was ready to fire. But what happened next was even more surprising than anything that had come before.
Don't shoot, darlings. I'm not here to hurt y'all. And it's mighty windy out here. Would y'all mind if I came in out of this weather?
Amos and Clayton looked at each other, then at the door. The last thing they expected to hear was the sound of another person, and certainly not one this polite.
What do we do?
I don't rightly know.
Promise. I'm not here to cause any trouble, darlings. Couldn't stand the thought of y'all in the hands of those raiders.
Amos looked at Clayton.
You keep that gun on the door. If anything happens at all, you shoot. Got it?
Mm-hmm. I got it.
All right. No funny business. And keep your hands where we can see them.
All right. I'm coming in, darlings. Just don't shoot.
Out of the dust swirls outside, the shadow took form. In the flickering light, they saw what appeared to be a young woman, scarf over her face and wearing goggles and a hood. A rifle was slung over her back, and she walked in, holding her hands up.
Clayton, give me the gun and close that damn door before we all suffocate.
Watching their visitor, Clayton handed the gun to Amos before jogging to the door and slamming it closed, while also dragging a filing cabinet to put in front of it. Immediately, the sound of the storm outside was muffled.
Now, would y'all mind if I put down these here hands?
I guess so, but no funny business.
The visitor put down her hands and removed the scarf from her face. Her coat was covered with blood. Amos guessed it had to be from the raiders. It was the damnedest thing he'd ever seen, but maybe, just this once, he and his family had gotten a lucky break. Taking a chance, he reached out his hand.
My apologies, miss. The family and I, well, it's been one hell of a day. I'm Amos, and this is my son Clayton, his wife, and their kids. I guess we owe you our lives.
The woman chuckled, smiled, then took his hand. Hers was smeared with blood, and Amos was surprised by not only the firm grip, but that the fingers seemed to end in what could only be described as claws.
Well, darling, it's just damn lucky I happened to come along. Folks call me Trader Red, but y'all can just call me Red.
Amos hesitated for a moment, then shook her hand, and as the storm continued to rage outside, the family gathered around their mysterious savior, and both they and Red started to wonder what exactly they had gotten themselves into.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
Thank you all for joining us for the beginning of an entirely new story as we follow Trader Red back to her home. We'll explore new regions, meet new creatures and characters, and learn what secrets lay buried deep in the Smoky Mountains of eastern Tennessee. You can learn more about our story, both the original Modus Files tale of the fate of Appalachia and the Ballad of Trader Red, on our website, modusfiles.com, or follow us on our various social media platforms, including Blue Sky and Instagram, @ModusFiles and @ModusFiles Podcast, or join our Discord. A link is included on our website. If you'd like to support us directly, you can also join our Patreon, where members receive special benefits like early access to episodes, special behind-the-scenes interactions with our cast, and read original drafts of our scripts. We'd also like to thank our cast: Chrissy Williams as Trader Red, DJ Reed as Raider Number 1, Devin Shadow as Raider Number 2, Joel Butler as Amos, Jeremy Tucker as Clayton, Preston Harden as JD, and introducing Pandora Beatrix as our narrator and editor. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. It's a wild wasteland out there, and we're just getting started. Stay tuned for the next episode of The Ballad of Trader Red.